All right, on this episode of Bouts Talking Bouts, we're talking about Tyson Fury versus Otto Wallin. It seemed to be a lot of dialogue going on over the weekend, specifically about the cut. So to that point, I thought it'd be a good idea to be talking to Cutman Rod Wingrove. How's your day going so far, man?
Not too bad. How's yours, my man?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. But yeah, it seems like the Cutman got a pretty big cash bonus after that fight. So it seemed like Tyson Fury even kind of noticed the importance of the Cutman there.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You don't really actually see fights too often where the cut man is kind of ends up being the star of the fight.
Yeah, that must have been interesting from your perspective to, be seeing something like that. Like, were you watching the fight live and seeing kind of everything unfold in real time? Did you sort of hear about it after the fact?
No, so I hadn't heard any. I didn't watch it live. I was watching the UFC actually, the UFC in Vancouver. But I watched it right after. I hadn't heard anything about the fight. I didn't even know who won or anything like that. But I watched it right after. Um, yeah, it was good, man. It was a good cut, and it kind of ended up being the story of the fight because not really much happened in the fight. So, um, yeah, it was awesome.
And I'm seeing some people in the boxing sphere kind of talking about how Tyson Fury was very lucky in as far as like how the fight didn't get stopped. Like maybe like the country he was fighting in played a role in it, or just like his superstar status within the sport in general. What's your read on that situation? Do you feel like the cut was severe enough for the fight to be stopped? Do you think some of these, I guess, detractors are maybe courting a sentiment that's accurate? Like, what are your thoughts on that end of things?
Well, it was in Vegas, and it was the Vegas Commission, so they're hands down the best commission in the world. Those guys know what they're doing. On top of that, you got Tony Weeks refing the fight, who has seen. He's probably one of the most experienced boxing refs there are. He was actually, if you remember, earlier this year, Bodo Jack, when he was fighting. I forget the guy's name, but he got the cut in between his eyebrows, and there was a lot of pictures going around with Tony Weeks, how his blue shirt ended up being red by the end of that fight. Same goes with this one. By the end, he had a lot of blood on there. But man, I'm glad they gave him the opportunity to do what he could to keep them in the fight. I mean, in that fight, Fury is the A side by a long shot, and they don't want to be it being stopped by some basically unknown. I'm a big boxing guy, and to be honest, I had never heard of Otto before this fight. So that's the last thing you want to happen is your superstar end up losing the fight because he would have lost. It was from a punch. It wasn't from a headbutt. So he would have lost that fight. You don't want them to lose because of a cut. But that's just the commission, and that's Tony Weeks. They're the best of the best. They know what they're doing. And, yeah, man, I'm glad they let it roll.
Yeah, for sure. Because I didn't necessarily think the cut. I mean, I thought the cut was bad, but not necessarily to a degree where maybe they'd stop the fight. Even though I saw Tyson Fury's dad rather described the cut as looking more like a shark's mouth. So I mean, I guess he maybe thought it was pretty serious.
Yeah. The one thing that I actually found interesting about the cut, Dylan, was it was big, and it was right on the eyelid, and then he got another one underneath it, a smaller one. Sorry, it was on the eyebrow, and then he got a smaller one that was right on the eyelid. But what I kind of noticed from that was it also swelled, and because of that, it almost created a bit of a bowl, and there wasn't a ton of blood going into his eye. And I think that is what part of the reason why Tony Weeks didn't call in the doctor, or it wasn't too much of an issue for them because it was a big cut, and but it wasn't really going in his eye that much. Fury did a really good job of protecting that through the fight, that cut too, and you'd see him just wiping it away a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it wasn't restricting his vision that much. So, but it was big. It was a big cut, man, for sure it was.
Yeah, and Jorge Capitillo doing a great job there with keeping the fight going and everything like that, and just helping out Fury in what was a pretty precarious situation. I guess on like a technique and just like execution sort of level, what was it that Fury's cutman was doing to keep things going on in the fight?
Well, it was actually there's a lot of things going on there. So number one, Jorge did a great job on the cut, but Tyson Fury also did a great job very much a veteran of, as soon as the round was over, getting back to his corner and listening to his cornerman, listening to his cutman, and instructing what he said and letting him do the work. You wouldn't believe how often when you're trying to work on somebody that they just make it so hard on you and themselves. They're moving their head and they're not listening, and because that's not what they're thinking about, like they're thinking like, oh, I got to get this guy back or whatever, right? You got your coaches yelling in your ear instructions and stuff, and a lot of times they're just not paying attention. But Fury, if you go back and watch the fight, as soon as the bell rings, boom, he's over to his corner. And props to Jorge for being very calm and very concise with his instructions. Hey, sit down, move your head left, move your head right, tilt your head up, don't move, blink your eye, whatever. Just very small instructions, very concise, and Fury listened. So number one, big shout out to Fury for being smart and being a veteran to know what to do in that situation and staying calm. And then for what Jorge was doing, he was actually going a little bit different route than what you normally see. If you go back and notice, he's not using swabs. He has swabs on his wrist wrap, but he's actually using 2x2 gauze. And my guess is that he probably didn't have swabs big enough to fit that cut. It was a deep cut, but it was also really long, and he probably didn't have a swab to fit that length. So he was going with the 2x2 gauze. Of course, he had the medication on there, but if you notice the amount of pressure he puts in that cut, you can see on his right hand in between every round, you can see his 4 fingers just gripping into the head of Tyson Fury because he's pushing with all his might to get pressure in there. A lot of people think when we're working cuts that it's, you just put some of that medication in there and that's it. No, pressure is a huge part of it too. Pressure, cold, and the medication. Those are all 3 things that can help stop the bleeding enough. So he was putting an unbelievable amount of pressure on that cut, and with both of his thumbs just jammed right in there. And then we saw how much Vaseline he was putting on afterwards. That was the part that I was actually surprised at, was that the refs let Fury come out a couple times. He literally had a half a bottle of Vaseline just hanging off of his eye, and even at one point it even just fell out. There was so much in there. But yeah, all in all, great job by Jorge. He kept him in there. He kept it at bay. He was very calm. That was another thing that I noticed. I don't even really know Jorge for being a cutman. Like, he's not a guy I'm familiar with. And of course I don't know all of them. There's lots of cutmen in the world, but these guys who are working for these bigger name fighters, I usually have heard of them or seen them before, and I had never heard of them. But I've heard of them now.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about the fact that there's like that dynamic between each other where they're like cooperating with each other, and sometimes there isn't always that opportunity afforded with the cutman and fighter relationship. But I mean, seeing the fluidity with these guys, pretty astonishing, just in the sense that this was only his second time as, Fury's cutman and kind of working on that end. So interesting, with that.
Yeah, for sure. I actually didn't know that was only his second time. They worked really well together. The whole corner did very well. A lot of times you'll see, and this is one thing that I really like seeing, and I hope it brings light to the fact, especially for boxers. MMA is a little different because in MMA, the promotion hires the cutmen, but for boxing teams, a lot of the times, even with some of these bigger name guys, like Canelo doesn't have a dedicated cutman. You'll see his coach, he's got the wrist wrap on, and his coach is out there putting the Vaseline on, giving him water, coaching him, and Canelo's pretty much untouchable, but if he ever was to get cut, you would see his trainer doing it. And I don't like that, Dylan. I like seeing teams like Fury's Corner where they have a dedicated cut man so that he can do what he can do and the coach can do when you get these guys who are trying to do everything at once, you become very inefficient. You can't expect to rehydrate him, cool him down, grease his face, work a cut, and give him like good instruction all at the same time. So I really like seeing Tyson Fury's Corner having a dedicated cut man on there. I always say to boxing teams, hey, see if there's a guy that you can get, that just a guy, who's a dedicated cut man who only does that. He doesn't even have to go up on the apron, or he can be the guy greasing. That leaves your coach time to coach and not have to do all these other things. And you saw the outcome. Look what happens. It's perfect. Tyson's still getting instructions from his coach. His cut man hops in the ring to take care of this cut. He keeps it at bay. Boom, he goes out and wins the fight. And it's really cool to see how efficient their corner was and how fluid they all were. If you look on the other hand, on Otto's side, he didn't really get cut, but there was a couple times where his eye looked like he was swelling up. And when the camera would pan over to them, all you saw was panic. Guys are like, there's just arms in the ring, and it doesn't seem like anybody knows what's going on. The coach is in there and he's trying to get his attention, and there's just all these arms in there doing different things. You didn't see that from Fury's corner. Everybody had a job and everyone knew exactly what they were doing, and everyone was calm, and that can be a huge difference maker in a fight, like it did in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the cuts requiring nearly 50 stitches to close from some of the reports I was seeing too. But the medical suspension he was given doesn't seem like it'll be something that will infringe on that prospective February date for the Wilder and Fury rematch. So, I mean, that's a good thing. But you're providing a lot of great insights, man. I'm curious, though, if you want to add anything as a parting thought as we're wrapping up here.
No, I think I kind of said my piece. Like I said, though, it's awesome to see the Cutman getting a little bit of praise every once in a while, because a lot of times that doesn't happen, and that just goes to show what an awesome guy Tyson Fury is. Like, how many times have you seen that where the Cutman has saved that fighter's ass and you never hear about it? Afterwards, you don't hear the fighter. So props to Fury for putting a little shine on his guy, Jorge Capetillo. Great job by him. Great job by the team. And I'm just so thankful that we finally get to see Fury Wilder too, because man, when that cut opened up, I thought, shit, this might put a wrench in that. But luckily it didn't, and we're going to see an awesome fight come February.
Yeah, for sure. And when I saw the cut go down, I definitely immediately thought of oh, I'd love to hear Rod's insights on all of this. So great that you were able to give me some time and insights, man, and really appreciate it. So thanks for that, and you enjoy the rest of your night too, man.
Yeah, you as well, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.